KLTV sound check, KLTV sound check.
Do you like when we do that? Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday meeting of the BOCC. Well, if you want to join me, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll get through the minutes, and then we have a special presentation from a young man, Chief Eagle Scout. So we're gonna hear from him. But we'll get through the minutes, and I'd ask Commissioner Mortensen for review of the minutes.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see everybody here. And as usual, I reviewed the minutes of the activities last week, and I move to approve those minutes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Questions, corrections? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I should note Commissioner Weber is out sick today, so he won't be joining us. Our next presentation, we have a young man, Ethan Metcalf. If he wants to come up, he has a presentation that he did. He achieved an Eagle Scout, and so he's going to give that to us, and we're going to give him a certificate for his work.
Hello, my name is Ethan Metcalf. I am a Eagle Scout out of Troop 313 based in Castle Rock. And today I made a presentation just to show what my project was about and how I came to be, or how I came to make the project. Let's see. My clicker is not.
You don't know how bad Kelly wants that thing to work.
Okay. So when I was making this, I just put in a little information. So my project is informational signs. There are 2 informational signs and then a welcome sign, welcoming visitors to Castle Rock and just directing traffic through town. That's what it assists with. And then it is a collaboration with the Mount St. Helens Motorcycle Club. In the left picture, that's me meeting with them and making sure that everything will be run smoothly and what times when I should create my project. And it was also a collaboration with the Castle Rock Blooms team on the right. I met with Nancy a lot because she helped me come up with the idea of this project. And I had an estimated time of the end of December, which was wrong. It was more January. So here's the start. This is what it looked like before. Those blue flags, I know it's hard to see, but that's the area I had to work with. I couldn't go outside of that. So it was like 8 feet by 8 feet. So it wasn't really a big space to work with. But this is the before pictures. And here's my inspiration. I was driving around a lot with my dad, trying to look at different signs in different cities. And I took this picture from Toledo. And I really liked the way that it just had all the information out and directed visitors and other people to areas around their town. And so in school, I did CAD work, which is computer aided design. And on the left is a design I drew up, which I didn't really like in the end, but it was a starting piece for what I wanted to do. And on the right, I drew up more on paper. Whoops, too far. Here we are. This is me with my troop. A lot of adult leaders and youth came out to help me, which it was a good turnout for our troops since at the time it was a little smaller, but I went with a red sign and white lettering just so it could catch people's attention more when they would be driving past, because I know there's not really much to look at on the left side of the 4-way stop there. And yeah. And then here's my welcome sign. I worked a lot with my shop teacher in class and used the CNC router that our school has to engrave letters into this sign that I wanted. So I had it say "Welcome to Castle Rock," and then I took it home, painted the letters, stained the wood, made sure that it no water could get into it. I sealed it, and there it is all together. And then recently in April, we had a Castle Rock cleanup day. And so I was assigned to putting fresh bark dust around the sign and then just making sure that it looked fresh. And but as you can see in the left photo, there was the old bark dust compared to the new bark dust. And I took these the other day. It was a street view of what it looks like now with all the flowers blooming. And I don't think it looks half bad. I like it. And that's the end of my presentation.
Well done. I live out West Side Highway past that. I'm about 4 miles past the high school. So I saw it start to go to work, and I was always giving credit to the city, and I'll have to take that back. It was you that did it. So great job. Let me read this to you, and then Commissioner Mortensen and I will come around and do this. Certificate of Excellence. This certificate is awarded to Ethan Metcalf, presented by the Cowlitz County Commissioners. In recognition of your achievement as an Eagle Scout and as a graduating class of 2024, your hard work and dedication have paid off. Best wishes for continued success in the future. And it's signed by 3 of us, Commissioner Mortensen, District 1, Commissioner Weber, District 2, and myself in District 3.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, may I ask questions?
Absolutely.
Ethan, have a seat. In my younger days, long time ago, I thought Boy Scouts were the nearest thing to heaven. But I realized then also that as you progress from a tenderfoot to Eagle, there are a lot of requirements. And I see in your sash, you've got badges after badges. There may not be enough people out there now who understand just how significant an effort it is to achieve Eagle Scout. Can you just give us a quick run through, maybe 4 sentences that say, well, do you need this many badges? You're split into these number of areas, that kind of thing.
I believe there's 22 required badges you need to be an Eagle. And those are the ones that you have to take at camp or on paperwork as well. And due to COVID, I wasn't able to go to camp one year. So it was a lot of paperwork that year. So it was, it is a lot of work. I could actually, this one, so to indicate which ones are Eagle, they're outlined in a different color than the rest of the badges. So the rest are outlined in green and our Eagle ones are white. So that's just to show that they're more significant than the others. I wouldn't say more significant, but they're ones that are more required. So.
And it seems like we have a lot of people that are sucked into like an Xbox, and that doesn't seem as constructive as what you did, what you have to do as an Eagle Scout or to achieve the Eagle Scout. Do you have recommendations for people of your age? That's kind of an offhand way of really saying, did you have a good time? Is that a good thing? Don't we need more Eagle Scouts?
It was a good time being an Eagle. And I say, for me, I'm also I've spent a lot of time on my Xbox too, but I just like to stay motivated. It was really hard for me. I procrastinated a lot on my project, and it showed near the end when I almost turned 18 before it was completed, which you can't be an Eagle after you're 18. So you have to complete every requirement before. And so I just had to tell myself, this is not okay to play on your Xbox every day. You need to get this done. So you just have to have the right mindset for it. I would say it's not for everyone, but I wish everyone would try and just enjoy Scouts.
Well, you've learned a lot of important things, including the timeliness, and then when you have a commitment to yourself, it isn't easy.
Mm.
So, and that's something I see too often. There's an easy button out there. Oh, well, why bother? And it's because as you get older, you realize what you can do then is the accumulation of everything you've learned along the way, and self-discipline is important. And then just the discipline to be able to help yourself. I appreciate everything you've done.
Thank you.
I've got to say, Mr. Chairman, I'm about as impressed as I've ever been.
Yeah, I was just thinking, that's the special part of our job. Okay, consent agenda. We'll run through that. Item 1, we have a call for hearing. It'll be July 9th at 9:45. It's on establishing CPACER programs. We have a call for bids, food service management for meal services for the jail and juvenile facilities. We have to send that out every so often, and this year is a year we need to send those out for bid. Agreements, contracts, bid awards. We have a contract with True Point Solutions for Acela support for ongoing maintenance and support for our permit system through the end of December 2025 for a total amount not to exceed $37,500. We use this a lot in building and planning, stuff that there may be stuff we don't have the knowledge base on how some of it works, or we don't have the time, and we use the True Point Solutions to help us develop some of that and work through it. 4, 5, and 6 are all contracts that we've looked at before. We have a contract execution, Compass Construction Northwest for the Clamor River Road culvert replacement project. That's a total project of $105,300. County contract execution with Lakeside Industries for the countywide pavement overlay for 2024. That's a total contract of $2,121,010. And a bid award to Specialized Pavement Marking for the 2024 Joint Agency Pavement Striping. The total cost of that project is $764,007. Cowlitz County Debt Policy, item 7. Every so often per RCW, it needs to be updated. So that's what we've updated that policy. It runs through the finance committee, and then it runs through our bond company, and they've both reviewed it and approved the updates. Item 8, renewal of our annual support for our Laserfish annual support and updates. The total cost is $53,230.07. It's roughly a $2,000 increase from last time, around 3%. A quote from Blue Allied to purchase 14 switches to replace aging equipment. Total amount is $125,506.26. These are Cisco switches. We have roughly 4 dozen total that are aging out. The The 14 number came from basically the human resource we have available to do those this year. But you'll see this probably continue for the next couple years, 2-3 years, as we replace those aging switches. And then we have personal service agreement with Shield Assessments to provide psychological examinations for those potential applicants for pre-entry process. This actually, we use this over at the juvenile center to work there. You go through quite a process, and we the fee for that is in 2024 will be $385 per session. I think that's how he explained it yesterday. And in 2020, $465 per session. We've done this for quite a while. This isn't anything new, but it's gotten to the point where we have enough applicants and stuff goes through. If it's $2,500 or under, we don't need a contract. It's just paid through. Well, it's reaching a point where it's going over the 2,500. So then we need to put it into a contract. Letters and notices. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission sent a letter to Pacific Corps. It basically was an acknowledgement of their safety plans on multiple projects. Letter from the Southwest Clean Air Agency regarding the supplemental income to be paid for the next calendar year. We get billed for their services, and so they just send us a deal to let us know what it's going to be this coming year, and the amount that we have to pay will be $30,565.12. A letter reappointing Kelly Lane to the Board of Health, representing the consumer of public health, 2-year term, and it expires 2026. We had 3 expirations came up. We sent out, and we had, I don't know how long the application process was out there right off the top of my head, but it was out there for a while, and we had 3 applicants come back in. So Kelly Lane was reappointed. Lorna Stewart was appointed to the Board of Health representing other community stakeholders, 2-year term that expires the end of June 2026. And a letter to William Youngren, appointing him to the Board of Health representing public health, 2-year term that expires the end of June 2026. A letter to Brad Keith, appointing him to the Rodeo Board, this 4-year term that expires the end of October 2028. And a letter to, I'll probably butcher this, Korea McGill, approving the appointment to the Southwest Washington Workforce Development Council, representing the private sector. This term expires the end of June 2027. And then last week, we had vouchers in the amount of $3,373,192.86. And that's it for consent agenda. Any questions, comments?
I have a question about the permits. As I've mentioned to you before,
The permits?
the permit, yes, on number 3,
Oh, okay.
all the way back up there. As I mentioned to you once before, we were trying to sell some property, and it's cost us not quite, but close to $20,000 for permits. Now, does this company add on to the cost of permits? Because if so, I think your departments need to be more knowledgeable so they can process their own permits instead of hiring out. Because $20,000 was a lot of money.
It's not a, I don't know everything Excel does, but it's not it puts the process online. It's basically an online presence. You'll be able to look up properties easier and do different things. Whether it gets, every that's kind of hard to answer, Flo, because every expense you do in an apartment, it basically comes out in some way, gets paid for, right? Is there a permit fee because we use Excel? No. Is there a cost of doing business and building and planning that's probably built into the cost of different permits? Yeah.
So
Okay, but all I'm trying to say, I guess, is the fact that since I've had to outlay that much money for what we're doing, I can imagine what it's doing to our county as far as other people trying to build homes. And if you're trying to get low-cost housing out, that's gonna fly out the window. Because after you put out that much money, and then everything else has gone up, that's not gonna work. And the layperson doesn't understand why it would cost that much money to process what they're doing. I have to pay another $3,000 at the end of this, and at the end of the week, or probably next week, just so it can be registered. Now, how difficult can that be? $3,000 worth? I doubt it, but that's what they're charging. And honestly, it just does not ring right. It's not right that you have to pay that much. I mean, I'm sorry, but is it state regulated? I think it is. And that's why I don't blame you guys.
There's a lot of, well, you've heard me talk on this before. There's a state building committee formed in the 80s that decides building codes and stuff for all counties. And I have real issues with that because it takes control out of the county and it adds a lot of cost to housing. I mean, I've given you some of those numbers. About 1/4%,
Right.
quarter of the cost of housing is regulation.
Well, and I agree with that. But don't you have any influence in that committee? Don't our people here, can't they have some influence on that and say, hey, we need to rethink this? Don't you protest it?
I would protest it all the time. In fact, I just tell them no, but I'm just one person here.
Can you organize other people to help you? All I'm saying is we were just struck dumbfounded when we realized each and every cost that we had as we went through this process. It was amazing. We just couldn't believe how much it would cost. It just was not logical that it would cost that much. I'm sorry. And again, I know it's state regulated, but can you get together with other county commissioners in other counties and say, okay, if we want growth, we have to change something? I don't, just a thought, because it hurt like heck.
Yeah.
Just, I mean.
You're getting into a conversation I think is probably deeper than just this solution
Okay.
here, and that's fine. I think it needs to be brought to head that, we make it real difficult for people doing
Yes.
homes and stuff. And I'm not disagreeing with you, Flo, at all.
Okay.
I just, this is a little bit different thing, but the problem you're talking about is real, and I do try to address certain things that I can address on there.
Okay, I guess it just lately, and I'm sorry to be such a kind of a nuthead on this and just, go off, but it just seems like every time I've turned around lately, there is something, an edict from the state that you have to take and follow that we as local citizens have had no say in, and yet it's being crammed down our throats. And this is only one issue. I'm not talking about others, but after a while you get kind of upset every time you turn around. Well, this is what you have to do. Why? Because we've decided that, not you. Okay, when we get our water, the first time we put our water well in, it was fine. It was a while ago. Okay, then we subdivided. We had to register that well on that property. However, we had to register our own well. It had to have a number. And there's only one logical reason that our well would have a number, is that later on, they're gonna have to tax that. are going to want to tax that because it is registered with the state. Now, we subdivide it again. And not only do we have to re-register our own well, but we have to register that one. And then also we had to pay taxes, pay permits, because we had to retest our own water and have our own septic system redone at a price, even though it was functioning and had been okayed before. And this is what we're fighting. It's like a lot of these things that are being told to us don't make any sense, and it's only to get more money out of us. And if you guys have any idea where I can go to protest this, because it's things that are taking money out of our pockets unjustly, and I would do it. And you know I would, willingly.
Well,
You know, if you
all that
can't do
stuff
it, I
start-
will.
all that stuff starts in Olympia legislature.
I know, I won't believe all the stuff that, yeah, okay, I agree. And I'm sorry, I don't mean a bellyache,
So
but I'm
don't
just
go-
mad.
Don't go away. You should be angry.
Yeah,
You should be angry because the legislatures typically are mad in the traditional sense of mad. They think somehow they can legislate the world and make it to their liking. In any event, let me just address specifically your question on True Point, and does that factor in? Anything out of context like this seems like it's going to add to the tab. Specifically, I don't know what the argument might be there, because I don't recall whether this gets spread out over the fees or this gets spread out over the departments, because I think it gets spread out over the fees. But what's the alternative? We finally, over the past year and a half under Tracy Jackson, have been cleaning up tremendous amount of stuff. Prior to that, we had an effort, and I'm going to throw out a number. I think we spent probably $800,000 on it to do what Excella is doing now. And so you might look at that as a little more cost effective than what we had before. Our current attitude in building and planning is show the customer how they can achieve what they would like to do. Then the pricing comes into effect. Essentially, the cost of building and planning is handled by the fee structure. And that means that the experience of the previous year factors into the current year and all that. I can almost tell you for sure that everything we've been doing is to improve the performance to the customer. One of the arguments about Excella is that it actually turns documents around almost on the spot. I'm an inspector, I got Excella out there, I enter things, and you can go to the office and pick up the permit. That kind of thing. And time is money. You've got to understand too that building and planning has to deal with big developers where time is more important than the money, and the smaller developers like you might be, where time is less important than the money. And we try and play a game of trying to balance that. In the general picture, you're talking to the right set of people here in the sense that we agree with you. Do I care what you build on your property? No, I don't. But we have the RCWs and the WAC rules we have to follow. Tied in with that is the public has this perception that the government will assure that no matter what you do, there'll be proper access for everybody around. It'll conform to standards. And if if you built a private road, say, and it wasn't properly feathered into a county road and an accident occurred, guess who's got the deep pockets? You know, it goes on and on and on. Does it make sense? No, it's an empire of that's been built, and each time you add a leg to the empire, you get more employees. With more employees reporting to you, you're more important.
Well, you know, I agree that things have to be done correctly and you're,
What is correctly, though?
well, I understand that too, but also in that you're cleaning up what has happened, perhaps not well in the past. And I understand that. However, we have followed county guidelines ever since we moved onto that property and improved. And I believe that if things were actually observed, if the county does come out and observe, and they do, and that's passed, things are passed, then that should have a guarantee, like, okay, this property, the house was wired, let's just take that for an example. This house was wired properly as you're building, okay, and you get a stamp of approval, correct? Then 10 years down the road, then that should still be accepted as it was right at the time. Now, you can't go back and say, well, we're going to charge more because you're going to upgrade because of this new addition. You're going to have to upgrade that because at that time that was proper. And this is what, I know I'm not saying this correctly, and I really am sorry about that. But if you're going by county standards and you're totally, you know, following the guidelines, we're not cleaning up anything that should have been approved. And at that time, when you do another addition to your property, then you shouldn't have to go back and re-examine what you've already had approved, had it been approved correctly.
Let me interrupt you. I don't know how usefully to approach this. I can give you one example, and then I see Tracy Jackson's logged on Zoom, and maybe if the chairman agrees, we can ask her to just comment at the high level. At the low level, there's just too many issues. So about 10 years ago, there was a meeting where I sat in. It was in that room. The Board of County Commissioners at the time was entertaining a petition from a citizen who wanted to add on to a house for a granny flat. The building and planning said, no, you can't do that unless you retrofit sprinklers into the house. And the reason was, well, because there was a new ordinance that said if you're building a house larger than X number of feet, you're going to have to put a fire suppression scheme that amounts to, in this case, a sprinkler. Well, the end result of that was the commissioner said, that's tough. And I think that was the improper answer. And the granny flat was never built. Permit was never issued. Anyhow, okay, so that I don't think is the case anymore. Are you up for saying a few words there, Tracy?
Sure. I could run upstairs if you'd like. Getting back to Acela, it is just spread across our department. We have not increased any of our fees for the last 4 years, and we don't intend to, at least at this foreseeable future. So we just eat the cost of if we have to send any of the internal work from Acela. It's the backflow stuff that nobody in the public sees, but we see it internally, and it's a way, it's the mechanics of the backside of the system that make it work between the two departments, environmental health and building and planning, as well as our laserfish system. So it's the nuts and bolts behind the system. We're working with them through this contract to get an interactive map online to where any public citizen can see at any time what's going on anybody's property. So the nosy neighbor can always see what's going on in their neighborhood or whatever. So You can pinpoint on what somebody's doing, and then you will know if they have a permit, what they're working on, what the permit is for. So there are things proactively we're trying to do to assist our department as well as the public, just to make it more user friendly. We only use this company if it's internal staff that can't program or get the workflow pieces to work. We send out that the work to this third party group. They're currently on staff. We have a bill that needs paid, and we need a not to exceed number and an ending date for our auditor's office to make the accounts payable bills go through. So this contract is already really in place. We just, we use it very minimally. And it's $165 an hour we pay, for their services, and they're pretty reasonable for what they charge us for and when. So that's the only reason it's on here, is because we needed an ending date and a not to exceed so we can get bills paid. But it is a current contract we do have, and our department just eats that cost because it's the cost for us to make doing business for us easier. It's not pushed on to the customer. We've actually not pushed any new fees onto the customers for 4 years now, or any
So-
increases.
So just to repeat, you say that you haven't raised fees for 4 years?
Correct.
And in addition, I think you've actually decreased some fees.
We have decreased fees, and we've also set some of the, we reduced the same as plans to try to get some of the contractors and nonprofits who build the same type homes on different lots, a same as fee, which is, don't quote me, I want to say it's $180 or a couple $100. And that's this, so they can apply for the same house on a different lot, same type situations, to save them money, so we can get more bang for the buck for the customer. We also have a fixed fee for wheelchair ramps, whether it's a very short ramp to stairs or a long ramp that's needed to get a wheelchair accessibility into a home. We've really tried to, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones we've done. Those two come to mind. I know we reduced those last year, but we've not done any increases. I've only been down here a year and a half, but in the last 4 years, they have not done any fee increases.
I really appreciate that. You've mentioned that. However, when I'm sitting here looking at selling 2.5 acres and thousands of dollars of permits in order to do that. And I honestly think that was way too much. If you go, each department has to have their amount, sometimes over and over again. I even had to have my well, they had to come out and look at it because they had to make sure it was put in the right place. They could have done that at the other time, but that was like $500 and some dollars. The other one was $300 and some dollars. They were out there twice, or was it 3 times? I had to have my perk holes. That was another time they had to be out there. I know I know it's dictated by the state. I totally get that. But again, look at the owner of the property and say, okay, if you're going to sell 2 acres, should it cost you thousands of dollars in permits? I mean, logically, I know what you're doing, but it could be done maybe in a more efficient way. It's going to cost me over $3,000 just to have it finalized. It blows my mind. I know you have reasons. There's all kinds of things you have to do, but $3,000 worth. I'm sorry. I'm just voicing what the typical property owner now is looking at and asking the same questions, that it's ridiculous, the amount of permits that we have to pay. And that's all I can say.
Well, I
think it has to be
apologize.
relooked at.
The septic and environmental health, water, soils, all of that stuff is environmental health. It's not building and planning. So anything that has to do with the environmental health unit, that's dictated by the state and the health department and the Board of Health. That has nothing to do with
I
building and
realize
planning.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. And thank you. I do realize that.
Of course.
However, when you're taking it out of your wallet, it's it's the same wallet.
Yep.
It's not a separate wallet. And you're having to pay all those fees. And whether or not I should go to the state and protest on that, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. All I know is
Yeah.
I need some help.
We're starting to delve into public comment stuff, I think.
Okay, I'm
I
sorry.
think, Flo.
I'm sorry.
I'm
I'll
not
let
trying
you
to
go.
chase you off. I think we're starting to get into better suited for public comment on a broader picture.
Okay, I'm sorry. And I really don't mean to get so cranky. It's just that I'm at my wit's ends. Thank you.
We had one hand up. Anonymous, go ahead. You're on mute. It just says anonymous, so I don't, you have your hand up. Okay, if they pop back. I don't know. Any other comments on consent agenda?
On item number 7, I just want to call attention to kind of a sequitur to the question of Excella in a upper level sense, so that there is a constant effort to clean up county policy. And in this case, we owe the treasurer, Deborah Gardner, a thanks for that. We need spring cleaning on the county code.
Yeah.
And that's a big effort. You're always afraid to touch something because the unintended consequences can be painful.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I appreciate her effort and all the other electeds that try to clean stuff up. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as you have presented.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Any other questions on the consent agenda? I still see the hand up, but he or she hadn't chimed in. So. Okay, seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, we have, just to remind you, tomorrow at 2:30, we have Lower Columbia Fish Recovery Board in for a workshop. Robert Sudar will be coming in to do that. I've talked about this a couple times, but there's, on one of the culverts, we had quite a few questions on salmon and recovery, and Mr. Sudar is very schooled in that. So it was kind of a request to bring him in and just have that opportunity to chat. So tomorrow at 2:30, there will be that opportunity. And with that, we'll open up to public.
Good morning, Commissioners. I would just like to echo Flo's sentiment, and I agree with her 100% on premise. The very institution that's saying that we need to work on bringing affordable housing to our areas is the same institution that is continually dumping costs down citizens' throats. So it's kind of an irony there. What's interesting about what she said was, I think, and I'm speaking as a citizen, not as a candidate right now. As a citizen, what we would like to see is the people who we elect stand up and fight for us and not hear the words, well, that's what the state, that comes from the state. It's mandated from the state. It's the RCW. It's the WAC, whatever it is. As citizens, what we want to see is we want to see the people who we have elected stand up and fight for what is right for the citizens that they represent. And the reason I bring this up is my construction company that in Eastern Washington right now, we're going through the same exact thing with permitting and with the issues that Flo just brought up on the homes that we're working on over there. And the thought of working together and pooling county commissioners throughout the state, I would venture to say that if that effort was made, that the majority of the county commissioners in our state would be on board with standing up to the state and saying, we've had enough, something needs to change. Because it's the same issues over there. in Moses Lake and Ephrata and Ellensburg, we're having the same exact issues with the permitting process, with the expense that is being shoved down citizens' throats. And as elected servants, what would be really nice to see is that there's an effort being made in communicating that effort to the citizens as to what is being done to advocate on our behalf with regards to this stuff. Because I mean, good luck with affordable housing, right? I mean, and not only does it affect affordable housing, it also impacts our economic development completely throughout the county. When we're looking at our growth moving forward, if people are having to deal with the finances and the expense that it takes to come in and develop within our state, I'm not saying it's the county, within our state, we have our backs against the wall when it comes to that. So I really feel that if there's an effort to push back and create a consortium within the county officials and within those people who we elect, and to be able to communicate that to the citizens that there's something that's being done on their behalf, I think would go a long way. The other thing I wanted to bring, go ahead, Commissioner.
Well, you just touching on some things I can touch on for you. I have talked to some of those people, and no, a lot of them are not willing, even though they agree with us, are willing to fight the state. See, not only do we have to be willing to fight the state, and I'd be willing, I'm the one that abstained from adapting the new rules. But you're going to have to be willing too, because they're going to file suit. They're going to file suit against the county. They're going to do all kinds of things, threats all to the people building houses and stuff. So it's not just us that have to have a backbone. You have to have one too. Because if we stand here and stand firm and the builders and everybody else cave, then it's not going to work. So it's really both sides of the aisle that have to do this. And I agree with you. I think it can be done if people will stand up and do it. I said, we had the auditor in the other day and they passed some stupid rule. And I said, well, all you guys got to do is say no. If 39 auditors say no, they can't do it. Well, and I know the people sitting here would be willing to do some of that, but it comes on that side too.
Oh, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And I feel, and that's why I said, I feel that if there's an effort made to communicate those efforts from the elected servants that they are willing to do that. So some of the commissioners that I talked to, one of the commissioners in Moses Lake about the same issues that we're having here. And a big part of the problem, to your point, is as citizens, one of the first things that we need to do is we need to elect people that are going to fight, number one, and not just have the attitude that, well, it came down from the state, so that's what we have to do. That's where it starts. And as a citizen, the other thing I can tell you is if I see you guys, my representatives, standing up and fighting and communicating that to me as a citizen, I'm on board. But when citizens like Flo come up, and I'm not saying you guys do this, but this is something that seems to be common, well, it's mandated by the state. As citizens, where do we go? How does that make us feel when we have that, told to us over and over and over? Yeah. So I think that the effort needs to be communicated to us, the citizens, that, hey, we're willing to do this, but we need your help too, so that there's something pulled together to make that happen.
If I may, there's so many things to be said here. The last statement reminds me of the aphorism. I'm not sure to whom it is attributed, but it's, at first they came for this, then they came for that, and I stood by. And finally, at the end of this chain of things, they came for me. That really is a problem. I have said many times here, the citizens have more power than they understand, but what they understand today is the convenience of today. I can't go to the protest in Olympia. I can't go to the protest at the Monticello Square. If 1,000 of us showed up at the Monticello Square, things would change within the local legislation. Just extrapolate that out. So while it's easy to point to any one individual, the convenience of the public is still such that only a few at the time are inconvenienced, and everybody else says, well, I've got more important things to do. There's nothing more important than to get things straight here today. We've done a good deal of that along the lines here, and I hope whoever wins the elections will continue that, respecting the citizens' rights to come up and speak anonymously or without identifying themselves or anything of that nature is something that doesn't happen in the other communities. And that's just an example of where the county tries to lead, but we can't even do that in our own county. That is, we can't even get the municipalities to sign up to that. They still have their arcane rules about decorum. Now, he and I have to have proper decorum. You don't. You can send F-bombs at us, and that's a capability you've got. We are constrained on that. And I'll jump a moment to one of the government techniques available is extortion. You want to contest us here? Well, we're going to take away these grants. So as long as we continue to feed at the government grant trough, which we do a lot, we are going to feel it's like we have to cooperate with them on things that we know we shouldn't do. That's a reason why I've never, even in my private existence, when I had a lot of budgetary responsibilities, I never let any vendor ever buy me lunch. It's just one of those things. You just don't want to start that line because it creeps. The banning of natural gas, I think it's at 2066, the initiative that's trying to fight that ban on natural gas. It's going to require a monumental effort to undo that stupid law. Will it will the people come together? I know I've signed a petition. Lots of people have to come together. That shows you the power of the public again. Recently, what is it, Jim Walsh and I forget the name of the entities. Anyhow, they were able to get 3 initiatives by the people. And of course, then there's some organization out there that says, well, that's not legal. So they file a suit and a judge. I mean, we got tons of issues, but pressure by the people is really at the bottom line. Understanding by the people is at the bottom line. And I had some other quickies, but well, recently you heard the chairman report. The chairman is a member of the Legislative Steering Committee in the Washington State Association of Counties, WASAC. WASAC is now upset, or I should say, as an entity, there's some troubles because the people that are members of WASAC, all the counties, pay on a capitation basis. So the 3 largest counties pay the bulk, but they get only 1 vote. And they're unhappy about that. It's not good enough for them that they dominate the legislature with an overwhelming amount of votes. They want to have votes in WASAC also. The WASAC is a bizarre thing anyhow. When you say get counties together, I don't think they've handled that properly. I agree with you. If we got our house in Cowlitz County so clean that we were exemplary at solving lots of issues, we would get a lot of counties following through. Early on during the COVID, as an example, there were others. Counties would contact me and say, what kind of, I hear you're doing a resolution of some kind. Can we look at it? Do you mind if we use it? And the answer is no. Do good stuff and it will proliferate. Anyhow, enough of a soapbox, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The other thing I wanted to bring up with regards to the food, you know, we talked about Meals on Wheels last week and that type of stuff. And I want to commend you guys. I do believe that you're heading in the right direction and you're doing the right things. I spent this weekend going around to our local food banks and talking with the people in line, not necessarily talking with the people that were handing out the food, but talking with the people in line. And the overwhelming majority are obviously very grateful that there's opportunities for them to be able to provide food for their family with the cost of living being what it is. But I heard multiple times over and over and over that, and it's interesting because these are the people who are in line to receive free food. But what they brought up a very good point, and that is that, for example, Woodland Action, they allow them to go through and to pick out whatever, groceries or whatever food they want. They specify how much you can take of each one of those items, but they're able to go through and to choose. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I believe Commissioner Mortensen, you brought this up on the Meals on Wheels. Some of the other food banks just give them a box that's full of food that they don't get to choose what they want. And the overwhelming majority of them said, we end up throwing more than half of that stuff away because we don't use it. Primarily in the Hispanic community, a lot of the canned goods, they don't eat canned goods. They eat fresh stuff. They cook it. And so, I talked to probably 15 people at one location, and they said that they get these boxes full of food, and sometimes they only use 3 or 4 things out of that, and they end up throwing it away. So the reason I'm bringing that up is I know that you guys have questioned how those food programs are being run, and brought up the waste and things of that nature. So I just wanted to say I appreciate your awareness of making sure we're not just throwing money away. The majority of the food banks that I went to, or the food is provided by private business, close dated stuff and that type of thing. But anything that the government is going to fund, that the county is going to give money to, I think we need to make sure that we're not giving money to programs that we're throwing away 75% of the food that's being given out. So I just wanted to commend you guys for your efforts in that area.
You remind me, several years ago, pre-COVID, I walked around, pre-Camp Alabama, I walked around a few of the ad hoc camps out and around, and the amount of trash and filth was just astounding. Amongst things in the trash were reasonably decent articles of clothing, but throw it away. I don't need it now. It's not cold. All right. I will find a new one next time cold comes. Canned goods, you mentioned. Wasted food all over the place. And yet we're told all the time that hunger is a big problem. I think there are other larger problems.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be taking care of those people that are in need. They're being taken care of. What I'm saying is that if the county is going to fund any of that, I'm glad that you guys are doing your due diligence to make sure that whoever is receiving those funds, that they're being used and that there's no waste and it's being run efficiently.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that the overwhelming majority of the people that were there were very grateful and gracious to the fact that there was opportunities for them to be able to go and provide, for their families. So if anything, I think that we should look for opportunities to help the institutions, not necessarily with funding, but with creating opportunities for them to have more access to food and resources and that type of stuff, and maybe giving them tax incentives to do so. So, but anyway, thank you.
Interesting discussion. Lots to say. It's getting close to time. You want to?
Well, it is getting close to time to Board of Health, but I don't want to cut people off, so I'll give a few more. Sorry, Kelly, we're going to probably run a little bit longer here.
A quick note under state mandates and executive orders. The Longview School Board meeting last night, again, looking at budgets and looking ahead, commented how they are severely hit with unfunded environmental mandates. Under the environmental, again, Inslee's green deals and green agenda, that there's only one way that they're paid for, and that's by us, all of us. So that's another implication of the state mandates on us. Then the other is that the moving ahead, the county mental health facility, that's been a common topic in the last few months. What is the status on that?
I'm assuming you're referring to one where we're trying at the juvenile center that provide some space for juveniles.
The mental health facility, not necessarily juveniles, the subject, the mental health facility that has been discussed at the Longview City Council meetings, proposing using a facility that we have, and I presume.
The only one I'm working on is with the juvenile center to convert some of that space.
I
but it
think
has
that's
to
the
be with
one, yes.
juveniles. And
Yes.
where we're at on that is a firm we use in different parts is drawing up plans for us with a cost estimate. And once I get those plans and the cost estimate, it'll come back. My promise to the commissioners is I work on this and I get information, we bring it back and we make a decision if it makes sense to keep going forward or it doesn't. So that's kind of where we're at right now, Ron. I'm waiting to get, can they retrofit a part of this building and what would it cost to do that?
Okay, so at least it's still on the burner and
Yeah.
moving.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned was the school levies. And that's an area where the public almost always votes for the school levies. And that's akin to the argument I was presenting earlier where you don't worry about anything. I got my kids in school, so I'm going to make sure that the school is properly funded, regardless of whether they're doing a good job or not, because my kid likes to play sports or something like that. Until the public gets together and starts analyzing things, until they realize that every time they vote for these programs that are clearly failing, they're part of the problem. It's hard for us to argue against things when people are saying, yeah, I'll pay the extra on my property tax. I'll force my neighbor to pay the extra on the property tax.
Right, and that's the purpose of this venue right now. Some of the public may be listening and hearing and knowing is that we all have to work together. We're here to comment and support you in those activities, and you can tell us and help us know what we can do too.
Morning, everyone. I'll try to be brief. So I live in Kalama and I'm a founder of a community-based organization and I'm very concerned with public health. I'd like to ask Wayne Nelson and the Board of Commissioners to reopen the SERPA process for Pinnacle Holdings and the Drax Company. They're international based. They are planning to produce 500,000 wood pellets biomass and ship them off to Asia at the Port of Longview. It's going to hurt the economy here. It's going to hurt public health and the environment. Drax has a proven track record across the Southeast US about lying about their numbers. Reopening the SEPA process would give us a chance to properly vet their activities. So they're planning to bring in, and they lied about this, but it's about 472 big trucks per day through Longview. It's a little bit low income. There's already a public health program with fentanyl and things like that. So bringing in this additional pollution would negatively impact our citizens. Now with the economy, so Drax, I've heard they're not planning on hiring any union jobs. They are going to be at the upper limit of the EPA Environmental Protection Agency's limits on atmospheric pollution. So just this one large company, it's UK based, they're coming in, they're not hiring union people, and they're going to exceed the atmospheric limits so that no other corporate company can come into the port and bring in their jobs in their industry. So no other current companies down at the port can expand their practices. So Drax is going to come in and take all the jobs. They're going to exceed the environmental pollution so that there's no more economic benefits for anyone else, any other state or local companies. They're also going to be with these trucks impacting the air pollution. So we need to reopen the SEPA process to do a traffic impact analysis. 472 trucks. So what about the traffic, the congestion, the signals? So we need to properly vet DRACs, reopen the SERPA process, know the facts, look into their clear cutting, all of the timber that they're going to be requiring to produce these 500,000 wood pellets per year. So Wayne Nelson and the commissioners, I ask you to please reopen the SERPA process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Couple more minutes, then we'll head into.
Oh,
Board of
this will
Health.
be
Go
real
ahead.
quick.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Your previous comment about telling the assessors that, you know, if 39 of them stood together and told the state no, then they would control it. Well, there's 39 counties and they all have county commissioners, I believe. If the 39 county commissioners all stood together and said no, you'd control it. At this level, we can say, yes, we support you. But if you had a coalition of the county commissioners that would all stand together, even a majority group of them who would take an issue, I don't care what the issue is, and take it to Olympia, and maybe even take it to a courtroom, I don't know. But somewhere, some way, if you had the majority of the county commissioners who all stood together, you could do just what you were telling us a few minutes ago that you recommended to the assessors. I don't know how you do it, but that'd be.
It was the auditor.
Or auditor, okay.
Yeah,
You
No,
just described Wasack.
yeah.
Yeah,
I agree with you, and I don't even need 39. I just give me a majority and I do it. And I can tell you this, I do talk to them. And if I get to that majority, I certainly would have no issue pushing back.
okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we'll, we will adjourn, because we have Board of Health, we have some things to do. And I'm not seeing anybody else rushing in and the hand went down. We will adjourn this meeting and then maybe a 5-minute recess and we'll get set up with Board of Health. We are adjourned. So. Yeah, she's Bill. We could have used you here an hour ago. We could have. We got to sit in. I think what's going to happen here is you'll get this started, swearing three new, and then they can take seat. Yeah. I'm going to do it three all at one time. So when I say, hi, state your name, don't say state your name. Say your name. You still call the meeting in order, and then you can move to swearing, and I'll tell them this is what we're gonna do. How's that? Works? Oh, my God.
Good cue.
That's Commissioner Borgson's calling card.
Good morning. This is welcome to the Cowlitz County Board of Health. We're going to call this meeting to order at 10:19. And I'm going to shift this over to Commissioner Dahl to do swearing in of the new Board of Health members.
Okay, in our previous meeting, our BOCC meeting, we announced three new folks. We received 3 new applications for appointment to the board. We reappointed Kelly Lane, we appointed Lorna Stewart, and we appointed William Youngren. So I'm going to have you meet me out here, and we'll swear you in, and then we'll seat you. All three of you at once. Okay, so when I say state your name, you don't say state your name. Okay, okay. I state your name, do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
I, Lorna Stewart. Solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution and laws. And the Constitution and laws.
And the Constitution and laws.
Of the state of Washington.
Of the state of Washington.
And that I will faithfully and impartially. Perform and discharge. The duties of the office of Cowlitz County Board of Health.
The duties of the office of Cowlitz County.
According to the law.
According to the law.
To the best of my ability.
To the best of my ability.
Okay, you're sworn in. Welcome. We'll sign these.
Do you know the seating assignment, Kelly?
Shall we sit here?
She will tell you in a moment.
Okay, so
I'm here.
you're here.
I'm here. I wasn't sure when I hear it.
There.
Thank you.
Just when you get in, and you go back. Okay, it's back to you.
Okay, thank you for your patience on that. Welcome to the board, Lorna and Bill. They will be named cards, so it's official by the next meeting, I'm sure. Moving on to the next next item would be to review the minutes. Everybody should have a copy of the minutes now. Is anybody have any questions or anything? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from May 28th.
So moved.
Okay, motion on the table is to approve the minutes of May 28th. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. So it passes. Okay. Next
Question?
item, yes.
Question, at this time, it seems like, I'm asking, not dictating in any way, shape, or form. Do we decide who the chairman is at this time?
I think according to the bylaws, we're supposed to elect the chairman the first meeting of the year. And so since it was done, since I was reappointed, it's the same guy. If somebody has a issue with it, we can redo it. But as far as I understood it, nobody said anything different.
That seems a bit strange because you could possibly not have been reappointed, in which case we'd have to.
At that
and-
point, yes.
And the level of ambiguity is a little bothersome there.
Yeah, no, I think if it was somebody else, we should probably revote. Does anybody wanna?
I'm perfectly happy with you continuing as the chairman.
You know, I would,
don't
what I
see-
would do, let's make sure if the bylaw, if that's the bylaw says, we'll follow it, but we should check those before next meeting. And if it may, there's two ways it could have been worded, the first meeting of the year or the first meeting of the new board.
No, it was the first meeting of the calendar year.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
If David Berger is on, if he wants to chime in, let us know, but so should I proceed? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so moving on to the next item, which we could have maybe Gina come up and kind of give us a little bit of a breakdown on the budget priorities list that we've been talking about for a few months. And I think she has some handouts for us. At the next meeting, we plan to go through all these items in detail, but it was suggested, a great suggestion, to hand out the materials beforehand so we all have time to review it. And then we can move on to the line by line items at the next meeting. So Gina, would you like to tell us what you've done so far?
Yes, good morning. Gina James, Health and Human Services. Welcome new members to the Board of Health. Just a side note, we plan to reach out to our new members to offer an orientation to sit down with us and talk through our department, just to have a little introductory meeting. So keep your eyes out for that. We have been working on, we've handed out in the last few meetings some priorities from Health and Human Services. We've gone through and attached some potential cost, as well as some additional information about potential process, frequency, impact, et cetera. So what you see in front of you is, on the left-hand side, is just the priority categories that we had identified, the strategies that we had previously identified, and then some of the additional information. What I want to say about this is we look at this as a completely fluid, conversational document. So we are interested in getting feedback and input from our Board of Health, and in terms of what areas you feel like their priority may be, as well as if there's additional strategies or ideas that may not be reflected on here. We would love to have more conversation about that. So please don't take this as a set in stone kind of document. We want it to be fluid and as we have discussions. Some of the items, I'm not going to read through it verbatim, but we'd like you to have the opportunity to read through it and digest. And as the chairman mentioned, that next meeting we will have more opportunity to talk through and have discussion about the individual items. We're certainly answer any questions right now, or between now and the next meeting. We're available. I'll just stop there and see if there's any initial questions. There's a little button.
Push, yeah.
Got it. Now it's
There.
on. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just had a question. There's kind of 4 big categories that you have broken down. Are we obligated, I guess, funding wise, to have things in each of those categories? Or if we chose, could we put all of the funds into one category, or how? I don't know funding wise how that works.
Yeah, the funding piece is a little bit flexible. So those categories were our identified priority areas, not necessarily what the funding says. So those were our priority areas. And we've talked before too, we've talked about the foundational public health services funding, but there's maybe other funding that could be available as well. So those were just our priority areas. And before we leave, I'll hand out the kind of an overview of the FPHS funding that helps to talk about some of that piece if you want to learn more about that.
That would be great. So is some funding tied to like these specific categories then?
There, in the FPHS funding, there is some allocated to certain categories. They're not necessarily these same categories, but there is some tied to communicable disease, for example, and there's some tied to epidemiology. And then there's kind of these broader buckets. So, yeah.
I'll say that just briefly looking at it without having time to really read through, it looks really great. There's a lot of, I'm really impressed by some of the stuff in here that seems to address systems and environment that will, I believe, have a really nice impact. I think our presentation last month from the youth, community prevention partners really made it clear that those one-time assemblies, scare tactics for kids for substance abuse prevention don't really work. So I want to make sure that if we're going to move down the assemblies and those kind of route, that we make sure we're touching back into what works for youth and substance abuse prevention. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that line item specifically.
Yeah, I think we were just sort of brainstorming ideas, and we certainly would want to move forward with something that first off is in collaboration with those groups doing that work and come to what that strategy looks like together. Yeah.
Anything further comments?
If I may, I think we should look at, there is no sacrosanct decision-making that will withstand through time regardless. I mean, everything's on the table. So one of the advantages of having new members is that they come in with other ideas and they may be more useful than the old ideas. So
Good point. And yeah, this is just the beginning, the overview. I think we'll put it as a big, take some time at the next month to really dive into it in depth. Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Moving on, we're going to talk with about the school gardens project. Is Ian? There he is. Thank you.
Right here.
Please. Kelly, you have a presentation, I think, set up. Would you like to introduce yourself, Ian?
Yeah, my name's Ian Thompson, and I helped found the local nonprofit called Lower Columbia School Gardens. There was already one garden at North Lake Elementary that was founded like 22 years ago by some parents and some teachers. And my kids were going to elementary school there, and I kind of got roped in as a volunteer. And then we expanded that place to an acre, and then some other schools started asking for help. So we formed a nonprofit in 2010, and now we're in all 20 elementary middle schools in Longview and Kelso school districts. So, and before that, I was a remodeling contractor here in town.
We've discussed school gardens a long time ago. One of the reasons why it's coming under the Board of Health, which seems at first maybe school gardens doesn't make sense, but I think Ian's going to tell us a little bit about there is a lot of value for or a lot of relations to the health issues in that you're teaching kids about nutrition, and that's right there is a big one. And then environmental health you mentioned. Yeah. So if you're ready, we can go ahead and start your presentation.
Let me just
Rick,
clarify. You're in all elementary and middle schools in Kelso and Longview?
Yes, public schools. Wow. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just reached that landmark real recently with the new school they built in Lexington, in the garden out there.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, or not landmark, we made milestone, I guess you call that. And I'm really grateful to be here. And I'm really grateful for just the acknowledgement that it's, that it is health. And it is prevention. You know, we are not really talking to kids about drugs out there, but it's sort of the positive thing before that. It's sort of like, you know, healthy, active stuff for people to do, you know, for kids and families to do that are free, that are, you know, a lifelong activity that they can do, and learning to cook and grow their own food and have a positive relationship with, you know, fresh, healthy foods, that whole thing. So, yeah, I just really appreciate that. And I think in our journey in the community, there has been, you know, when we approached like the Healthcare Foundation for funds and, you know, Peace Health, there was initially, they were like, well, you know, it's not really medicine. It's not really fixing people when they're sick. So, but then there's been sort of this understanding of like upstream health and, you know, having people have a healthy life and a healthy community before they're sick. And, you know, maybe we should put effort and dollars there as opposed to just, you know, medicine and Band-Aids after the fact. So I really am super grateful to be here. So
Thank you for coming.
And can I just like, there's kind of a lot of slides. Do you want me to say next slide every time, or can I give you a thumbs up or? Okay. So next slide. And as for a lot of these, yes. So just a base timeline, I guess I sort of already went over this. Yeah, it was a Kaiser physician, family physician, Leanne Geekus, and her daughter was going to Northlake Elementary, and together with some other parents and some teachers, they were kind of like emulating a program in California called the Edible Schoolyard. But they just, you know, got some donations and had some work parties and created this garden. And for a number of years, that was the only garden in town. So next slide, please. And this is Northlake, which is, we as a nonprofit don't have our own space. We have a classroom and one of those little portables. So in 2010, the garden on the left was the original garden. And then we looked out at this big grassy field and said, you know, can we plant some more fruit trees there? And the principal at the time said yes. And so that off to the right is an orchard. So this is like probably 2010. And so next slide, that's a couple years ago. But that's an acre, and it's sort of turned from an orchard more into like a food forest, if you've heard that model, where there's sort of all kinds of food plants growing together. And it's really become, you know, public schools are sort of community spaces. You know, families come in to use the playground and whatever. So we really have connection with almost every family, you know, that has kids and even families that don't. Anyways, so this is like a place that people come for all sorts of reasons, but it's where we're based out of, and then out of there we serve the other 19 schools. Next slide. And just a little bit about our nonprofit. There it is. And, you know, a common misconception we hear a lot is that's great. You know, what the schools are doing, they have gardens in their schools. And while the schools are a great partner, it is the community that's doing it. So it's a community nonprofit. We're begging for, you know, most of our funds. Districts are less than 5% of our budget. And so anyways, just to sort of, that's how it works, but it's just, they're all on, you know, school property. Next slide, please. And we used to put this, why school gardens? Why would we do this? It's a lot of work and it's messy. We used to put it into 3 buckets, and we have since thought of a few more. But next slide. One thing is that kids are working and they're outside. They're doing things with, you know, they're using their bodies, they're using their muscles, they're using tools. They're doing things that mean something. They're working on a goal that has, that's meaningful. You know, people are being helped by it and they're proud of that. Next slide. And that's St. Helens Elementary. And I think for a lot of us, we need to just sort of remember that we all don't have the same access to stuff. And a lot of kids don't have a backyard, and they don't live in a household where they go places. They don't go to Willow Grove Park. They don't go to the coast. They don't go to take a hike or something. They don't get out. And so if you are in, if you then go to this school and your playtime for 6 years is working with the same plastic equipment that's bolted down, that can't be, interacted with creatively, there's just not a lot of outlet for kids to be kids and do what we're supposed to be doing as kids, which is playing in the woods with sticks and mud. So this is these kids like, digging in this kind of sad, dead soil. And that's the best thing that they've got. So next slide.
So that was their natural, they were doing that on
Oh
their
yeah,
own.
that was the kids' thing. And I'm sure they got yelled at, don't wreck the beautiful grass. But that was like a lot of these kids every day, they just met at the dirt hole, But kids, they're not lazy. They like to work. They're thrilled when they have a job that's meaningful that they can get into, and learning skills, using different tools. So many kids haven't touched a hammer or shovel or a wheelbarrow, and they just get a lot out of that. Next slide. Yeah, just gaining skills and confidence and self-esteem, being able to do meaningful things. Next slide. And next slide. We do a lot of this in the school gardens, cardboard and wood chips. We get wood chips from the city and arborists to maintain the gardens, and kids are a part of that, Next slide. You can't really tell, but it's raining this day, and kids do not care about being out in the rain. They're happy to be out there working. Next slide. And kids get to, that's Huntington Middle School 11 years ago. But kids are a part of building the gardens, and the gardens are never finished. There's always projects going on that they can interact with. And so letting kids, use tools and do real stuff is a big thing. Next slide. And then another thing is just the way that kids learn. And again, the way that kids and, humans are wired to be able to be touching things and discovering, a lot of times in the classroom, that's a really tough environment for kids where it's all paper worksheets, you kind of stay in your desk, not a lot of moving around. And so when kids are in the garden, they don't think of it as school, but they are, they're just doing what kids are supposed to be doing, which is learning, and asking questions. So next slide. Next slide. And you don't really have to coerce them. Like they already naturally know what to do. They look at stuff, they ask questions, they dig up things. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. You can teach any subject out there, not just science and nutrition, but math. And I could use a little help in knowing where I am with time. Okay. Maybe you could give me like a 5 or 10 minute warning. Okay, appreciate it. Next slide. And they're also just spaces where kids can just sort of be kids, like I was talking about. This is, again, Huntington, and this was a group of kids, middle schoolers that wanted to build a big structure for beans to climb up. And so we cut down some trees at the edge of the grass with handsaws, and they peeled off the bark, and they built this teepee, and they had a government. There was the Society of the Bean Lodge, and there was a president and, officers, and there was all these meetings about mixing. Those are custom mixed colors of paint. And there was all these meeting about, what colors and what the order of the colors should be. And not that this happens every day in those places, but just that it's a context where that kind of stuff can happen, And the chickens were just one of our volunteers just brings chicken sometimes. Next slide. And then really important thing that's happening is that kids are learning about real food. And this, again, I think it's really important to remember a lot of kids' experience. They're in a household and sometimes their parents and maybe their parents' parents were also in a household where people are not cooking. People are not taking ingredients, chopping them up with a knife and stirring it around in a pan and making food. The kids have literally not seen that happen. And so if they're eating stuff from like a corner store or fast food or whatever, and then they get to school, and I'll just speak for Longview School District, lunch is sort of like assembled in a central kitchen, and it comes in plastic packages to the individual schools. Kids sit at their desk, they open a plastic package, they eat it with plastic forks, it goes in the garbage every day. And then they go home, and if they're having the same experience, they really have not had it. And so they are flabbergasted that I can pick that thing off of a bush and eat it. That sounds weird. Are you sure that's safe? And so, but once they get it, it really is miraculous. And, we have all heard you should eat more fruits and vegetables. Like everyone has heard that. These kids have heard that, and hearing it another 1,000 times might move the needle a little bit, but this is like exponential. It's just, it literally, kids will, and their parents will say, how did you get my kid to eat this? Because my kid will not, this kid will say, I don't eat anything green. I don't try new things, but their friends are eating the stuff, or they've planted the seed and they've cared for the plant. We say, do you ever eat flowers? They're like, no. And we're like, do you know that broccoli, when you eat broccoli, that's the flower of the plant. That's what part of the plant it is. And also those little green, buds that you see, those open up into this yellow flower. And in the garden, it doesn't happen in the grocery store, but in the garden, these little flowers open up and you can eat them. They're delicious. Kids think they're very cool for eating flowers. And then they look next door and there's a kale plant, and the kale flowers are even better. And then you have like a group of small children that are like locusts devouring raw kale, devouring these plants. And that just doesn't happen without that sort of exposure. If it's on your lunch plate, it's not the same excitement. And we don't even have to lean on kids. Hey, you should eat healthy foods. We have to be like, you need to save some carrots for the next class. You guys need to slow down. So it's awesome. And, the main rub with this program is just trying to get all those kids out to these gardens with limited staff and limited resources and teachers that are so strapped with all the stuff, all the hoops they have to jump through in their daily. Next slide. Yeah, so every time they're out in the garden, they're tasting, that looks like radish flowers, which are great. And yeah, just kids being adventurous eaters, celebrating what's in season, Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. And this is funny and sad and happens all the time, but kids look at a potato coming out of the ground. First of all, they're like, why are those in the ground? And then I would never eat anything like that. Are you kidding me? And we're like, have you ever heard of French fries? They're like, wait. So next slide. And there's only so much you can eat raw out of the garden. So we're also teaching cooking. And you can't really cook much without using a knife. So we teach kids to use knives. And next slide. Next slide. And this is like a beautiful thing that happens and kind of a good example. We try to plant asparagus in all these gardens. And we'll have like 10 kids and 9 of them have never heard the word asparagus. I have no idea what that is. And then we, harvest it from the garden, put it on the grill with some olive oil and salt and pepper. And at the end, they all love it. And we literally hear from their parents, we were in the store and my kid said, we need to buy that stuff. It's really good and I know how to cook it. And so, yeah, thank you. Next slide. Next slide. And then this is sort of one of the other reasons that we've learned, and this is like the social emotional health. And we hear from schools, especially, with the extra stuff around COVID, just that kids aren't gonna learn math. They're not gonna do well in school if they're not feeling okay. And like being in nature, smelling some rosemary, digging in the dirt, that sort of stuff is a thing that really helps. And we have, we see people from, school counselors, administrators, folks from Core Health, Youth and Family Link that are at the schools. Kids will be having a bad day and they can take them out to this garden and they come back, having a much better day. So it works that way. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, just like this is St. Helens. Kids opted to skip recess to move a mountain of gravel, which they loved, and they were sad when it was gone. And they have, ownership. Kids in the neighborhood have ownership over these gardens and kind of look out for them. And there's we have incidents of vandalism here and there, but there's really kind of this culture around them where the neighborhood kind of has ownership and is looking out for them. So it's pretty good. Next slide. That's that same garden a little later. And just to say that these aren't like just a garden plot of veggies, there's fruit trees and grapevines and herbs and pollinator gardens and all that, native plants. Next slide. You can just kind of keep going. This is the new one at Wallace. You can keep going with slides, just sort of new garden at Wallace Elementary. Summer school kids helped build that garden and plant that garden, which is a really special thing because the kids that are there for summer school are the kids who really need that extra intervention. Turning in a cover crop after the first winter, fifth graders planting fruit trees, just kind of a legacy thing to do, This was what we looked at Lexington when we arrived. And so we had to bring in a lot of extra soil to basically build an island, but that garden is now up and going. Next slide. Next slide. And I'll just say that, right now we've got they're open to the community during the summer. And right now they're like 4 of them are open as we're speaking. And I just got a text from a coworker who's at St. Helens Elementary and they're picking cherries and a bunch of families have showed up. So that's a thing that's happening, right now, an activity for kids. And so, yeah, I guess I'm just really hoping that folks can see the value. And maybe we could just actually, next slide, kids digging a foundation for this structure. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. We'll just stay there for a minute. So, just this idea of, like I said, of prevention, just that there's this positive thing to do. And I guess what I want to communicate is that these programs are very unique in that it's not just a program. The garden is the program and the garden is alive. Whereas if it was a sports program or an arts program, if you don't have the funding, you can put your supplies in the closet. And when you get funding, a couple of years later, you can dust it off and bring the program back. But with gardens, you can't do that. They closed the school at Beacon Hill. We turned our back for a couple of years and came back and there was no garden. It was Canadian thistle, 5 feet tall, and you could see a few fruit trees, but there was it would be starting from scratch. So it's really important that there's continuity. And we're in touch with programs, across the nation. And it is a constant struggle. Some teachers and parents get excited, they start a garden. The teacher retires, the parents' kids are done with 5th grade, and so they move on. And the weeds grow over the summer, and the district says, you know, we can't have this big mess, and it gets bulldozed. And that happens, every district has that story in their history. And the places that it's working is when there's this partnership with a community group. And we somehow, little old Longview, Kelso we have people from around the region coming to ask how we're doing it, because what we have is not what most people have. There's not, you know, most communities don't have a garden in every single school, this robust and stuff. And so we've been able to get funding to build these gardens. And now that we built number 20, and that's our scope. We're gonna, you know, maintain and do all these programs and make sure they're thriving for the community and the students. We're having a really hard time funding that now. You know, other granting agencies sounds like you got it covered. We're gonna go fund this emergency, you know, and so that's what we're up against right now. We're really looking to try to figure out how to fund this. And so that was why, you know, it was part of why we appreciated seeing school gardens in that recommendation or whatever a couple months ago at your meeting, because it really is a part of health for our community. So I guess I'll stop it there, and maybe if there's questions. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
I'm really impressed. Because
Thank you.
this used to be the norm where we have local picture gardens.
Right.
And they would teach the same village how to can.
Yeah.
These things, there's been studies where they 1 in 3 families and a garden like this. So, really important. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate what you're doing. It's really important. And are you tied to the extension services and Master Gardener programs?
We partner with them in some ways, and we're working on expanding that partnership right now, but there's some. Could you do a couple more slides? I forgot there's one part of it I wanted to share about the fact that we share food with the community. I don't know if you've seen these free farm stands. We used to do produce sales, but now we're giving away about 6,000 pounds of food. You can just kind of burn through those until we find the right. But anyway, so just that we're providing extra produce for families, but also plants and seeds so that they can grow at home, you know, and these kids are taking that knowledge home and they're able to do it at home, whether it's a container on the porch or whatever. Next slide. That's one of our farm stands. Next slide. And that's, you know, now that we're in the season, that's going on right now. And those are, like I said, strategically located, South Kelso, 2 in the Highlands, 1 at Barnes. But yeah, we're with you there about it. I'll just say we did not invent this idea. It's sort of a reaction to where our society is, that this needs to be a program, you know, where it's supposed to be part of life, living life on earth. You know, people are working with the plants are helping the people. It's just like a thing that kids deserve to be a part of.
Boy, Mr. Thompson, I'm impressed. Thank you. I said to somebody, I was visiting WSU. I go over and visit with them every so often, and they were talking about their master gardeners. And I made the comment, and I said, I can't ever recall seeing my grandparents having canned anything. You know, they grew and they can their own stuff, but stuff from a store, I don't ever remember seeing that kind of thing. And as you described, kids these days don't get it. And the things you do, this is one of the things and I've said before, I said, you know, people look for government for solutions, and we're really not a solution agency. We put more roadblocks in the way that we do solutions. Solutions come from the people. And what you're doing is tremendous. And I thank you for that.
Appreciate that.
Just one question and a comment. Do you do any homeopathic herbs and plants?
We do. Yeah. I mean, I guess we don't use the word homeopathic, but we talk about, we talk about medicine.
Medicinal?
Yeah. And a part of some of that is a partnership with the Cowlitz tribe that's we've been happening for the last number of years, and planting, plants that are indigenous to this area. And what did the people that have always been here, what do they use this plant for? That kind of stuff. So we do talk about that stuff, and just, basic stuff that I hear kids repeating, telling their friends, oh, if you're sad or stressed out or whatever, you should just smell some lavender, or some rosemary, like kind of telling each other.
That's great. Just a couple notes that I wrote down is teaching them cooking and nutritional value. It's all gonna, and just working in the garden is all gonna help the mental health of these kids. I think it's a great program.
Don't have much to add, but to say that concur with everyone. I mean, in the tribal community, we talk about food as medicine all the time. So there's no doubt in my mind that gardens are part of healthcare. So I know that's kind of where we started this conversation. And prevention. We know that culture is medicine, and like Ian just mentioned, we've had a partnership with them doing indigenous plants and including the Cowlitz culture into the garden. So that's there as well. So everything from physical activity to healthy eating to social wellness is part of the garden program. And in the tribe, our garden is actually under the medical clinic's management. So we fully believe that. We know that food RX programs are work, and that gardens work for benefiting community health. So thanks, Ian, for your presentation today. I think it's really important for everyone in the community to know what you're bringing to our youth here. And I know that the work that the tribe does really goes hand in hand with what you do.
Sorry, Kelly. You heard in a previous meeting, we had a citizen ask on where we're at on working on trying to utilize some excess space at juvenile for some adolescent help. And we had a couple of our people visit a facility over in Spokane that's really put together by, I think, 7 tribes over there. And one of the big pieces to it that is, we feel has created the success that they've had over there is the kids have projects where they have music projects, or they have gardens, or they have these type of things. So I think the comments on the long-term mental health of these kids, it'd be interesting to track them, because I would almost be certain that they're going to be easier. It's going to be easier for them to deal with things that come before them than some others.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that about mental health. It's real, and we also, I mean, part of our thing, we have garden agreements, walk in the garden, and one of them is take a deep breath, and we talk to kids about how to feel calm, what to do if you're feeling anxious, that sort of stuff. And we do hear kids saying that those tools, are helping them, and just recognizing, kids recognizing, wow, I feel really good right now. I'm just digging in the dirt. I'm talking to the person next to me. I feel really peaceful right now. And just recognizing, note to self, and nobody's talking about drugs. Don't do drugs. Nobody said that. But what we're finding is, here's a thing that makes me feel good, that's productive and helps me connect with people and stuff. Yeah.
I'd point out too, in all those pictures, I didn't see any kid with a cell phone.
There is that, just doing something outside that's not, screen time. But for a lot of kids, that means do sports, and not every kid is going to do sports. They're they're going to try, and they're not going to be very successful. And what's cool about the garden is that everyone's successful. But yeah, it's like, what sort of active activity can you be doing? And a lot of times you see kids looking around at kind of a bleak landscape saying, what is there to do? Look at all this cool stuff on my phone. So yeah, it's real.
So just a top level comment and then a question for you. I have a holistic view of the world, and this program is teaching kids disciplines across many areas, and they're learning by osmosis, which is something you said essentially. You learn by being involved in doing, and I call that osmosis. Today, you're going to learn the chemistry of plants. Doesn't go as far as you fertilize it with this and it didn't do well, but with this it did do well, yet the other plant, and on and on. So I think the holistic view of that is utterly amazing. So I don't look at it as just a board of health issue. It's actually the health of the society. Okay,
Wow,
so
yeah.
So the question I have is, clearly what you've done is very well done. How can we help without destroying it? Because government has a way of destroying things.
Well, you could find us some money. Is basically the main, I think that's the main thing. We have a lot of great systems. We have a lot of volunteers, but there's only so much volunteers can do, and volunteers turn over, and someone has to be there, to recruiting and all that stuff. So we have systems in place. That's sort of what I can think about, but I also just feel like just sort of the awareness and the advocacy that, it exists and it's a resource, and we do find that there's like infinite ways to connect. Like almost every program we talk to, YMCA is going to come do something with us. Like the prevention folks, like we're partnering every time we turn around, and just remembering that as a resource,
How would you use a chunk of money?
Well, that's the thing, not in any really exciting ways, because, well, I mean, it's exciting to me, but all the exciting ways are kind of used up. We're building a brand new garden. These, 400 kids haven't had a garden, and now they will because you're going to give us this grant, or we're going to build a shed, or we're going to build, a thing. And because we've chosen to spread wider.
If I might interrupt you, the issue on something like that is, and I'm not sure how this plays in with you. If you mentioned there was a garden that was abandoned for a year and then or two, and the thistles were high. In the real world, somebody doesn't just come in with a bulldozer and set everything up for you and dig and say, okay, now you can plant. You actually have to start with the idea and then the elbow grease. I don't think we want to shortchange that. So I still want to know something more specific. If you got a chunk of money, how would you use it?
And I've had the job, I don't have it currently, but I've had the job of raising funds and advocating for money, since we started to try to get this thing going. And I know, like most of the time, I'm saying that I'm gearing my responses towards people. When we say what we need help with is funding our bare model, just the model to do the stuff that's just to have the gardens exist, to be, to have someone who is coordinate. Our model is garden coordinators. So one staff person is basically responsible for 3 or 4 gardens, and they interact with the teachers. They do outreach for families. They lead classes. They lead volunteers, that sort of stuff. So we are in a place where we're not able to pay for that stuff. And we just had someone leave to go do a different job, and we were not able to rehire that position. So we are basically scrambling to be able to just maintain, and we're looking for ways, and we're, looking in all the places, but we're looking for ways to be able to maintain, to keep this beautiful thing going. And right now it's kind of sketchy. And so there are grants out there that we could apply for to do something new, but that ends up being mission creep, where now we're doing all these things that aren't part of the basic mission, but it's how but if you want the $100,000, you need to apply for it. So we're at a place, we've arrived, after building these 20 gardens at a funny place, and we have multiple funders say, we're not going to fund you anymore because you're not building anything new. So are you asking if we're going to build something new?
I'll try to give you my jaundiced view of, I started out with saying, how can we help you without destroying you? as soon as you collect money to pay for volunteers, they're no longer volunteers. And that's how the changing, the transformation happens when it was something that was beautiful coming from the people now becomes something from the government.
Oh, I think I see what you're, I think I see what you
But
mean.
if you said, look, we could buy a little tractor. Kids could learn about what keeps a tractor going while they can dig a post hole.
Yeah.
And we need more shovels. We need more of those garden tubs, stuff like that.
Right, and I just want to say that we have all those things. We don't need any more shovels. We need to be able to pay our 6 staff who are somehow managing 20 gardens. When people come out and see what we're doing, when volunteers come out, they're like, how is this happening? How is this possible? You have 250 fruit trees out there and 300 grapevines and, hundreds of raised beds, and you have 6 staff, and 6 staff are not doing all that work, but they're coordinating volunteers. I don't know if you've done that work, but that is a piece of work in itself. So that's what I'm talking about. And there are like lots of easy grants to write for a tractor, which we don't use tractors in our gardens, there's not really room. Shovels, raised beds, there are grants for that. That's not the help we need. So, and it's really hard for me to say that because my job is to try to get funds for this organization to keep this work going, but that's not the help that we need. So it's just to sort of pay the basic bills, and we've scaled way down on some really cool stuff. We're doing less cooking classes. We're doing less fun stuff because we've chosen to spread wider because, it's not fair that kids at these schools don't get, this opportunity or whatever. So that's where we're at. But hopefully I'm hearing you right.
Changing focus for a moment, a thing I starve for up here is information now. I'm very comfortable with what you're doing because it feels like it's human nature that you're exalting, and that is always going to be successful. I am concerned about stuff in the future, and I think you have an opportunity to collect the data. Like, I would like to know how your 2019 students who are now maybe juniors in high school think about the program. And keeping that data handy over the years is something a lot of organizations don't do and should do.
We have some of that stuff. We've done some evaluations over the years of impact on kids and surveying teachers and that sort of thing, focus groups.
And then
we have some of that stuff we could share.
Okay, that's for, at some point, that'll be a part of how you can continue to go and prove that.
Right, no, it's true.
Because not everybody's going to be as believers as we are when the.
Right, people say, show me the numbers. Yes, I'm aware of that dynamic, yeah.
And then there are, the herbal stuff was mentioned, but I think many of us are not very good at surviving because we don't know you can eat this, but you can't eat that. Do you do any of that?
Yeah.
Identification of beneficial weeds?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, absolutely. Dandelions and yarrow and mullein and yeah, all that stuff we do. And that's a big part of it. Is you can't tell kids you should eat plants without, first you should learn what the plants are, and sort of this idea of having a relationship with plants. And that's something that we're getting from, the Cowlitz tribe, and that wisdom of like considering plants relatives and entities that have wisdom and lessons to teach us. What can we learn from this, from the willow tree? It's flexible. What can we learn, and sort of learn anyways, just like learning these plants and like, it's almost like they learn rosemary, and that every time you go by rosemary, you need to like take a few leaves and smell them and, say the name rosemary, and then that's your friend for life. You can move to another state, but that's like somebody that Anyway, just to say that that's part of that whole thing, foraging. And we're actually, we had a mushroom, we have guest farmers come into the schools sometimes, and a variety of different farmers, herb farmers, but this one, they grow mushrooms in St. Helens, Oregon. And they came over and, showed the kids a bunch of the mushrooms. We cooked some and ate them. They helped us inoculate some wood chips with some spores, and they're growing King Stropharia wine caps right now. And they're, but they are learning very, this does not mean that you go out and eat any mushroom you see, because that's not a good idea. But the power really is in knowledge, in knowing, and they can realize that a lot of times I'm walking down the street and I'm literally walking by free food. Some of it is weeds, considered weeds or whatever, but yeah.
I just want to say that I definitely hear you in the need for staffing as someone else who's run a garden. And I don't think that takes away from that feeling of community or that volunteering, like Ian's trying to say. I think it is really critical for gardens to maintain that staffing. I know that the tribe went forward with it. One of the main criteria is we need at least one full-time, and then you grow and you need more staff to coordinate. And the community is still heavily involved, like it is with Lower Columbia School Gardens, I believe. But without that funding of staff, it becomes impossible to manage these things, or these volunteers, or the equipment or supplies that you have, or even to do that evaluation work that is so critical, right? Like oftentimes I think we skip that because it takes funding to do it and you need it for the funding. So it's this like vicious cycle. So I just want to say I hear that, and I would support, as a Board of Health member, finding ways to make sure that that basic framework of funding remains in place, based on what I know about gardens and health, and especially in our local communities. So
We do have a couple hundred, it fluctuates, but I think, last year was 300 and something volunteers total. And yeah, that just takes a lot of managing, and you can't fire them when they don't show up or when they're late or.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, really grateful for the opportunity. Thanks so much. Nice to meet you all in person.
Nice to meet you too. We'll be in contact and going to be discussing the funding that you just mentioned, Alyssa. So at this point, I'll go ahead and open it up for public comment period. One thing though, Alyssa, were you able to talk to the tribes yet?
not yet. Sorry, I have not heard back. There's
Please
only so
do.
much I can do.
Want to meet with them, especially after hearing Mr. Thompson's working with them as well. That's another part I didn't even think of, working with the Indian tribes on medicinal plants. Please go ahead. Lynn, sorry.
Thank you. I can't say enough good about the school gardens. I was able to volunteer for a couple of years while I served in AmeriCorps and be involved year-round as they engage the students in planting, picking, cooking, learning all about the plants. For one of our AmeriCorps projects, we headed up a project for the school gardens, and to see this man take just a plot of land and make it into just a beautiful setting, utilizing the whole area around the fence line, growing plants everywhere. It's pretty amazing what they can do. Everyone is enthusiastic and energetic. It's a fun place to serve. And if you haven't been able to volunteer in the garden, I suggest you go try it out, because you will be hooked. It's really fun. The people are engaging, they have well thought out plans, and they get things done really well. So I want to thank Ian and his team. They do a fabulous job.
Thank you. Next.
Just had a question from the gentleman that gave that wonderful presentation. I think that school garden is a wonderful, wonderful thing. When do they normally stock the garden stands at the school?
You can come right to that microphone, please.
there's, first, one thing that we're advertising right now is sort of calling it U-Pick as a way to get volunteers and community members to come through. So like this week, we're talking about all the gardens that have cherry trees and people are coming to pick the cherries. So just showing up to our community days, which are, we have schedules posted on the internet and other places. It was in the Daily News this morning. But basically all the gardens are open one day every week. So like I said, there's 4 of them going on right now. So you could walk into one of those gardens, say hi to people, eat some strawberries, go home with some cherries and some lettuce or whatever's growing, whoever kind of shows up, whether they're there to help or not, can take home some food. So there's that. But the farm stands at North Lake Elementary, that's every Friday, on Olympia Way, kind of by the library and the college. That's every Friday at 10 a.m. And then the other ones are Thursdays. And I think we're rotating between Longview and Kelso. So those dates are on our website, but Thursday mornings at 10. I believe that this week that is Wallace and Barnes Elementaries will have them. And then next week it'll be St. Helens Elementary, the Highlands Neighborhood Center, and one of our staff who lives on Oregon Way has a stand in her front yard. Thursdays at 10. But anyways, the easy answer is to, or not for everyone, but go on the internet, look up school gardens, and they're all on the schedule there.
Thank you very much.
Did that help?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you, Commission. My name is Bob Runnels with Informed Choice Washington. And I'm also very happy to hear about food forests in Cowlitz County for kids. That is awesome. There's a lot to be learned from that. I personally had my head in the sand for, say, 30 years in terms of what public health policies we're doing. And I'm not going to stick my head back in the sand after being kind of disturbed and watching the whole world go to the one direction and believing what things were told to them. And now we've got some forensic data, which is a little more stronger than science, I think. Data showing that the policies were possibly very ill-founded. And there has been comment in this Board of Health, in this forum before, that said, well, there were only just a couple vaccine deaths from COVID vaccine. Well, hot off the press this week, I'm bringing 9 scientists with me who wrote this paper. It was submitted to the Forensic Science Institute, or sorry, Forensic Science International last October. It's taken 9 months to get this through peer review, and it's about to be published. This is a pre-production copy. By the time you get back to your computers, it may be published. And so the title is A Systematic Review of Autopsy Findings in Deaths After COVID-19 Vaccination. Written by somebody who works at the Michigan School of Public Health, a bachelor, probably did all the heavy lifting, but then there's a PhD and an MD 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 PhD and an MD and an MD MPH who wrote this paper. So I'll just read the summary. I'll summarize the summary so we don't belabor, and I'll leave the copy with your executive. The rapid development of COVID-19 vaccines, combined with a high number of adverse event reports, have led to concerns over possible mechanisms of injury, including systemic lipid nanoparticle and mRNA distribution, spike protein-associated tissue damage, thrombogenicity, which is blood disorders, cardiovascular disorders, immune system dysfunction, and carcinogenicity, causing cancer. The aim of this systematic review is to investigate possible causal links between COVID-19 vaccine administration and death using autopsies and postmortem analysis. This is pretty much the study the CDC doesn't want to do. They searched PubMed and ScienceDirect and all published autopsy and necropsy reports relating to COVID-19 vaccination, and this is up through May of 23, so about a year ago, but all the way through the vaccine program start. All autopsy and necropsy studies that included COVID-19 vaccine as an antecedent exposure were included. So 3 physicians independently reviewed each case and adjudicated whether or not COVID-19 vaccine was the direct cause or contributed significantly to death. They found 678 studies in the initial group, but they looked for qualifying factors, and so they really went from a population then of 325 autopsy cases and 1 necropsy report. The mean age of death was 70 years. The most implicated organ systems among cases was the cardiovascular at 50%, hematological 17%, respiratory 11%, and multiple organ systems 7%. 3 or more organ systems were affected in 21 cases. The mean time from vaccination to death was 14 days. The most deaths occurred within a week from the last vaccine administration. So a total of 240 deaths, and this is about 74% of the population, the N number, were independently adjudicated as directly due to or significantly contributed to by COVID-19 vaccination, of which the primary causes of death include sudden cardiac death at 35%, pulmonary embolism 12.5%, myocardial infarction 12%, VITT, which is vaccine-induced thrombotic thrombocytopenia. Look that one up, that's 8%, so basically a blood disorder. Myocarditis, 7%, multisystem inflammatory syndrome, 5%, cerebral hemorrhage, 4%. So if you go back to the numbers that have been cited here many times, the open VAERS or VAERS data in terms of reported deaths, which arguably and very arguably is underreported. There are currently 37,647 VAERS deaths reported as suspected relationship with the vaccine administration. Take 75% of that roughly, or the rate that they found, that's 28,000 confirmable vaccine deaths. That is something to be concerned about. I appreciate this committee's, this commission's skepticism of public health policies, how every county in the country was forced or went to one direction with one solution. So I'll read the last conclusion. The consistency seen among cases in this review with known COVID-19 vaccine mechanisms of injury and death, coupled with autopsy confirmation by physician adjudication, suggests there is a high likelihood of a causal link between COVID-19 vaccines and death. Further investigation, that's what most papers have in there because they'd like to find that mechanism, but this one is a causal link. And that's all I have for the day. Thank you.
Thank you. You're going to leave copies to the clerk, you say?
It's 61 pages, so I just don't want.
Okay. Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Okay, with that, one more comment here.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. My one question to the gentleman about the gardens, what was his name, Ian?
Ian.
And on the fruits and vegetables, the seeds they use, when they grow the new crop, do any of them have seeds in them too?
Hello. I guess I didn't turn it off last time. Yeah, we save some seeds from some plants. That's trickier with some, but like, beans and sunflowers are really easy to do that with. But yeah, and I don't know if you're interested in growing stuff, but we end up getting a lot of seeds. Stores can't carry last year's seeds. So, Walmart and all these big stores will give us their supply of seeds from last year, and then we give those away. We actually have a little order form where you can say, what kind of seeds you want, and we'll like put them together and leave them out for you. So I don't know if that's helpful.
I wasn't sure if I heard this or not,
Yeah.
but anyway, does any of these things actually go to any of the supermarket or the food stores around here?
Not food stores. Our food goes to the farm stands I talked about. We supply Radical Love. They make meals for homeless folks out of St.
Is it
Stephen.
Longview?
Radical Love, that's in Longview. And then the Family Community Resource Centers, which are in Longview and Kelso school districts. We supply those folks with food. Ethnic Support Council.
Okay, because excuse me, I've never heard of these organizations like Radical Love. I've never heard of it before. So thank you for that information.
Yeah, you bet. I will try to find a card or something if you want to,
Okay.
more information on stuff like that.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I haven't went through all this, so I have no more for now.
Thank you for the comments. Okay, with that, no hands? Okay, with that, I thank everybody for coming and bearing with us, and we'll adjourn the meeting at 11:31. Thank you for coming.